evening. Welcome to tonight's show. We open with powerful accounts from international activists from around the world detained by Israel forces following the Gaza Flotilla interception, harrowing testimonies that are sparking global outrage. On another front, of course, Khawaja Asif has categorically rejected India's renewed war rhetoric, underscoring Pakistan's defense preparedness and commitment to regional stability. Pakistan has also rejected the Financial Times report about a proposed US built port in Pasni, Balochistan, calling the story misleading and speculative. More on that later. We'll also be talking, of course, about Pakistan Army and the fact that, of course, the warning that in the event of renewed hostilities, it will respond resolutely and without restraint. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Oves Anwar, who's Director, Research, Society of International Law. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Dr.Raja Qaiser Ahmed, who's a foreign affairs expert, and we'll be joined by other guests during the course of the program. Oves, thank you for being with us today. Of course, we've seen the harrowing images from across the world of detainees, human rights activists who have been treated in a brutal manner. We're all watching. We've all listened to the reports. How are you looking at this time? This brazenness in the way that Israel is treating these detainees.
Thank you very much for having me, Mahrukh. First of all, I think this is not something that surprises anyone. The Israeli regime has demonstrated that it is willing to cross every red line that exists under the international law rubric. It is willing to violate not only the territorial integrity and sovereignty of other nations, but also willing to take out humanitarian aid actors. We see a number of international law violations, and looking at it from that perspective, many of these, the flotilla, many of the ships there were interdicted in international waters where the freedom of navigation is guaranteed by the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, Article 87. What we also have is that such interdictions are only permitted in exceptionally limited circumstances, like when there's suspicion of piracy or slave trade or something along those lines. It is not permitted in humanitarian situations. The argument that the Israelis have put forth here.
As far as Israel is concerned, they've, and I think you were going into that also, they're talking about provocation, which it seems is extremely misleading, and also the fact that they are also, it seems, signatories to, like you mentioned, the Geneva Convention, right?
Absolutely. The Geneva Convention, regardless of whether you're a signatory or not, much of it is customary international law, so it applies to every single nation without distinction like that. So it certainly applies to Israel. But in this case, what we also see is that Israel has violated not only these basic laws here, but it's also violated international law, its own domestic law relating to, say, the Convention Against Torture, when it has detained these individuals and dealt with them by taking them to some of the more severe detention facilities like the Ketriot prison facility, where the images and the news that is coming out from these is really something that is violates the Convention Against Torture. It looks at it's imposing degrading treatment. It's people like Greta Thunberg are being forced to say kiss the Israeli flag. They're being dragged by their hair. This is some of the news that is coming out by the people who have come out of these places, and the news that we're hearing.
We're talking, we've been talking about Hamas and the way that, they've been talking about the fact that, they're fighting Hamas over hostages. Then what possible justification could they have for this treatment of these detainees, who were there for distributing aid? There's also the fact that they are humiliating them, like you said, as far as, in Greta Thunberg's case also, so publicly. Is that also not giving their own narrative, exposing their own narrative in a very, very clear manner in front of the world?
But I think what the viewers really need to understand is that there is no real narrative here. There's no narrative that is justifiable. For example, even if we take the Israeli argument that this is a naval blockade in a military situation, that a military operation is taking place in Gaza and therefore a military blockade. Military blockades are prohibited from being a form of causing starvation. So you cannot have a military, a naval blockade for that purpose, and that is exactly what the purpose is. Secondly, naval blockades cannot block humanitarian aid. This is again a critical principle of the San Remo manual,
But it's
which
not the first
codifies the
time.
customary international law on this.
But it's not the
Exactly.
first time in Israel's case, right? Please continue.
Certainly, it's
And they keep on
it's
doing
not the
this.
first time. What we're not only is Israel violating every norm. Exactly. And so what this does is that it imposes an obligation on the international community that it must take measures that have so far, additional measures that so far have not been taken, whether that is imposition of wide-scale sanctions against Israel, or whether that is taking military action to prevent it from committing further abuses. The international community really has to step in now. And that is really the concern here. To the point that you mentioned, why is Israel committing these acts, such as torturing Greta Thunberg? This is, I think, in my opinion, signaling. It is signaling. It is a form of intimidation and coercion, which is exactly the definition of torture under the UN Convention Against Torture, where public officials deliberately inflict severe pain, mental or physical, on individuals to intimidate a third party or that individual, or to punish them for something. So this type of treatment is punishment for engaging in this humanitarian flotilla, and it is to prevent and deter others from doing the same. And that's really what the signal in Israel is trying to push here.
We keep on talking about international law and the inadequacy of it, ineffectiveness of it, whatever one may call it. In your opinion, what is of course, persuasiveness is one of those things, the fact that there is some kind of persuasiveness to it. Like you said, there is some kind of, old traditions, or what one can say as far as international law is concerned. But effectiveness, again, the way that it's been eroded in this case, how do you look at it? For the world to see, yeah.
Mahrukh, you raise an excellent point. I think this is the million-dollar question that everyone around the world is asking: that what is the point of international law now? And as we can see, it's been a spectacular failure over the past 2 years, 3 years, if you will. But the silver lining out of all of this is international law gives us something. It can't be enforced. We don't have the ICJ. We don't have an international police force that is able to really stop Israel from doing the atrocities. But Israel still gives us the language of critique. It allows us to understand what genocide is, because the world has come together and defined genocide is a particular thing. And that is the label that we are able to put on Israel and then utilize in our criticism and in our ability to shape public opinion. It's really, in the end, it's going to be public opinion that causes Western governments to withdraw their support from Israel. And the actions that you see Israel taking, these are actions of a desperate government, a government that sees itself falling, a regime that sees its tactics failing, and the international community rising up against this. So, I certainly have hope that what we're seeing in the West, the recognition by so many countries, the youth coming out and speaking against Israel, and really this Zionist APAC lobby that you see losing its hold on many of the political figures around the world that they've been supporting.
In terms of mistreatment, denial of food or medical care, legal access, all of those things are among the violations that are so brazenly being done on the part of Israel. And now that these, those, like you said, that this is really just signaling for the world. Do you think it's going to have an effect? It's going to be, effective, because we are looking at a monumental level of resilience here. When we look at the Palestinian people, and of course, with regard to Palestine, the 20 points, as far as President Donald Trump is concerned, where we are with that regard, keeping that aside, we've had, again, I want to take you there, to renewed questions of effectiveness, not just of international law, but also of things like the UN, all the organizations that are supposed to stand for these kind of abuses. So how do you look at that as an activist, as a human rights expert? How do you look at that, the effectiveness of all those things falling so clearly in front of us with regard to Gaza and this mistreatment now?
Absolutely. I think, we've heard the Jewish community having suffered the tragedies, the atrocities of the Holocaust, coming out and saying never again, and really building this state of Israel to be able to ensure that these types of atrocities never take place. I think this is a moment for the Palestinians to say never again, and for the world community to say never again. What Israel has done unto the Palestinians will never again be allowed. And really, it is a time to reform not only the United Nations, but the Security Council mechanism, the gridlock that the veto imposes into the system, and really fixing it from within. I think already statements have come out. You heard the Spanish foreign minister at the UN General Assembly say that no one should have a veto. You heard a number of other countries coming out and stating that there's need for reform. The UN Security Council, but the UN itself generally needs to be far more representative. This is not 1948. This is not 1947. This is 2025, and we need a new mechanism to ensure global peace and security, one that actually works, right? One that is enforceable.
You are saying that this is not 1997 and that it's 2025, and of course, but don't you think that in a lot of ways we've gone back? The way that we have seen the treatment of women, the treatment of children, the way that we have seen, I think the largest cause of death, we've all seen the social media of children is reported to be the killings that we've seen in Gaza. So in a lot of sense, have we not gone back? Have we not regressed? Even like again, even when there are all these organizations at play, when there are champions of human rights, when there are, we have people saying that they're going to be, like you said, Holocaust ended. But this is a new form of it, right? What we are watching at this time. And we talk about, of course, rallies. We talk about the support that we've seen. In your opinion, has it had the kind of effect it should have had, even bit by bit? Let's talk about that.
Mahrukh, obviously it hasn't had the type of impact. The type of impact that I would have wanted was a complete cessation of hostilities. And not only that, I would go further and, holding Netanyahu and his generals and his ministers accountable for the atrocities that they've committed. Unfortunately, nothing of the sort has happened. What we have is a 20-point plan by President Trump, and he's proposed that, we've all heard what the 20-point plan is, that there'll be an international stabilization force of foreign individuals. They'll be brought in, and they'll be phased withdrawal of Israeli forces. And then what you will have is that once there are reforms in the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian administration, then and only then can real negotiations towards a Palestinian state come about. This is
one country,
much of
right?
what we've heard.
It's really just about that one country now. It doesn't matter whether UN, and like you said, the veto issue, or what the UN says, or what the European countries are saying, or what, for example, of course, countries like Pakistan who are standing resolutely with Palestine have said. It is just about the US and where they are, what their stance is, whether they continue to stand behind Netanyahu or they choose to take a position which is some semblance of humanity, or so that these kind of violations can cease. That is what it has boiled down to ultimately, right?
It has, but you're also seeing a change within U.S. politics, right? It is going to be slow. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but you are seeing a change. Being a close ally of Israel is going to be political suicide for many politicians, and that is something that people are going to realize, and that is how the shift changes, right? So it's really public opinion that's going to change that. Coming back to the particular plan that Trump has imposed. I think it needs severe modifications. Hamas has already said that we accept the bare bones of this, but it needs modifications. That Trump has taken positively, meaning that he wants to have an end. And what we see here in particular is things like the International Stabilization Force. It all seems to be skewed in favor of Israel. If anything, if any international force has to be deployed, it has to be there to protect the Palestinian people. And if any reforms have to take place, it has to be that the most right-wing government Israel has ever brought into power needs to be removed. It's not the Palestinians that need reform, it's the Israelis that need reform. And that is something that hasn't been understood. Again and again, we hear these genocidal statements, most recently by Itamar Ben-Gvir, the national security minister of Israel.
Wes, you know, I'm going to interject. When we look at international law, the concept of provocation, for example, there are clear, parameters within which that exists. And could you go into that? Because for Israel to plead provocation or even assert it, there's little ground here. And I'd like your opinion on this.
So, I mean, the concept of provocation really is what we would say would be preventive or preemptive self-defense. That Israel would be saying that Israel anticipated that an attack would be taking place. But this flotilla has not only not been, in any way armed or has any weapons or anything, has been exactly the opposite. These have been peaceful individuals bringing in aid. Now, the aid element is not only contained in the Geneva Conventions, but the decision, the preliminary measures decision of the International Court of Justice on the genocide case against Israel said that there must not be any impeding of humanitarian aid. And that is why this flotilla, when it was acting in accordance with a number of international law things. And so there's simply no question of provocation. In fact, what is happening here is that Israel's prevention of allowing this aid in has been the provocation. And many of the countries, their ships, and ships in on the high seas are under the jurisdiction of the flag that they fly. So if it's a UK ship and has a UK flag on it or an Italian flag, that government has control over that ship, not the Israelis, right? And so what we see here, when Israel did that, if it's a systematic thing and it piles up, this could be considered use of force against those states and their issues. So if there's any self-defense that is to be utilized here, it is by those states against Israel, not the other way around.
Right. Thank you so much, Oves. Thank you for your very valuable input. I'm going to move on to, of course, India's rhetoric that we've always seen and the image, global image that is seeing the facade that is breaking and it's collapsing as we speak. We have with us Raja Qaiser at this time, who is a foreign affairs expert. We're going to be talking to him about, of course, the kind of the events post Pahalgam that we saw, the kind of fallacy as far as India and their statements are concerned that have fallen through, the facade that has crumbled to the floor, and of course their anti-state rhetoric, their terrorism that has perpetrated not just Pakistan but all over seems to be resonating, and the world has of course caught on to what India sponsored terrorism really means, and of course their aggressive statements toward Pakistan that continue, and of course that have little bite to them because it seems that they have little to follow it up with. We also saw the defense minister's statement saying that of course it's a failed attempt to try to restore what has been lost on the part of India, whether it's their global image or of course whether it's the kind of signaling that all over the world has seen, whether we look at Canada or we look at of course the incident in US also of the killing that was done by and the State Department's investigations regarding that. Of course Pakistan has long suffered at the hands of Indian state terrorism that continues to perpetrate, whether it's through other countries or the direct involvement of which we have multiple dossiers. And if we look at, for example, Kulbhushan Yadav, among other numerous cases in point. Raja Qaiser, we're talking about, of course, this more recent aggression that seems to have come without any real bite to it, because there really doesn't seem to be much they can hold on to at this time as far as India is concerned. How do you look at it, of course, in the light of Khawaja Asif's statement also refuting the kind of the kind of play that we saw even in Pahalgam, the kind of acting that we saw as we look at the media, which had real or no, which had no authenticity to it, which had no actual reality to it. How do you see it?
Well, thank you, Mahrukh. That's absolutely, ridiculous. Indians, they are making a mockery out of themselves. And, it's an absolute clownery, which you see post May 10th. And then that makes, obvious rounds. Reason for that is because India, it had been through an embarrassment and a watershed moment which they had never conjectured, or it was something which they had never even anticipated. the kind of blowback which they had to face in their ambush against Pakistan. So they are literally speechless at the moment. I mean, they had been literally speechless over the months how to react to what has actually happened. They had never, uh, surmised that things would go down to that level where they would become a laughing stock before the entire world. And you see that now they are even defense professionals. This is the level of the infiltration of Hindutva's ideology into India's institutional matrix. It is appalling at the moment because the kind of statements that are coming from their officialdom and from these
Raja Kaiser, in your opinion, is it about their domestic politics that have suffered, that have taken, or is it about redeeming themselves on the international scene? You know, in your opinion, a bit of both. What is it? Because there seems little to no authenticity to what is being said. You know, the provocative statements that are coming, there is nothing to base it on. And like you said, the world has really seen that. So is it about, you know, imaging, that they want to signal something to the world, they want to recoup their lost image, although that doesn't seem to be happening? What is it?
No, Mahrukh. It's not for international optics at all because international media, international statecraft, international system, they are well privy and well cognizant to what has happened in this war. But this is for creating domestic optics because in India, state elections they are impending. They are almost in the near offing. In BJP, it is just trying to, sell this divisive rhetoric, and they are trying to, they're trying to create an alternative reality. And I would definitely quote here Arundhati Roy. She says that, India is a strange country. It lives across multiple centuries at a single time. So that's the kind of the metrics which we are coming across right now. So they are just trying to utilize on a media polemic. They are trying to hello.
Ra- you know, Raja Kesa, does this, you know, but when we talk about these statements, when their top generals or, you know, their ministers are openly making such statements, we've already been through the fact that this is not, what a responsible state would do. But what happened with Pahalgam was not what a responsible state would do. And then again, you know, as far as, and that was not restricted just to Pakistan, but we saw a categorical denial of what the US president had said on multiple occasions with regard to intervention. So the relationship between the US and India also seems to have taken a beating, post that. So that kind of irresponsibility is now, they're just, it's nailing their coffin, so to speak. How are you looking at it?
Yeah, well, Mahrukh, Indians, they have created a bluff over the last 2 decades, and that was Rising India, Incredible India. And that was
Yeah.
more of the figment of the imagination. And what we have come across right now, the way when India, it came into, battleground against Pakistan, so it literally had to bite the dust. And this has been widely acknowledged by the international community. You see that India's relationship with the United States has
Yeah.
deteriorated to plums. It's at the lowest, at least, in the past 2 or 3 decades. You see even India's relationship with its traditional partners like Russia and France, it is also in tatters because, India has not only
In terms of imaging also, when we look at the image, like you said, it's this extreme rhetoric, the Hindutva doctrine. And it's something that we've said again and again. The Prime Minister said it at UNGA also, and again, the fact that this kind of an environment that India is breeding in the region. Pakistan, of course, we have no need to even defend ourselves because we have the power that we have demonstrated it on multiple occasions. But the question is this going to be lucrative for this region? when with a power like Pakistan, when we look at our nuclear power, when we look at this kind of damaging rhetoric, when, false claims, unverified military victories, inflammatory speeches that we are continuously, being made to hear with no real, like I said, there's no real reality to it, right?
Well, Mahrukh, it is often said that you can fool some people for some time. You can fool some people for the larger period of time, but you can't fool all the people for all the time. But Indians, they are trying to create a domestic ripple, in within their polity. They are trying to placate and ingratiate their own masses, because literally what has happened to India is not unprecedented, but it is unparalleled. So the kind of tactical brilliance and the kind of operational preparedness which has been exhibited by Pakistan's forces, it was nothing short of spectacular. So no one had even imagined in its wildest fantasy that an adversary which is 5-6 times larger than size of Pakistan would be thrashed and would be rattled like this. So but now they are left with no choice, and you see that BJP is already under pressure. They have been clamoring that they are going in the elections of 2024, that they will be going to 400 above seats in the Lok Sabha, but they have been reduced to 245 seats, their lowest since 2014. So, and with the looming elections, state elections in Bihar and other states, so they are under increased pressure, public mounting pressure, and you see that the kind of these concerns and these questions are not only raised by international community, not only by Pakistan, but the sensible and the sane voices within India. They are raising these pertinent questions to Narendra Modi, even the opposition, and then the sane intellectual voices within India are coming up with very tough questions for the Modi-led regime.
Point taken.
But
Thank you
they are
so much,
trying.
Dr. Raja Kaiser. Thank you for your very valuable input. We're going to be joined by Brigadier retired Haris Nawaz, who's a defense analyst, overall to talk about what are, of course, openly inflammatory speeches by, Indian officials, categorically targeting perhaps their domestic audience. But when we talk about their domestic audience, it's important to mention, of course, the opposition leaders who spoke. Rahul Gandhi spoke within their Lok Sabha, and he talked about the fact that this is how irresponsible the Indian Prime Minister had been, how irresponsible, of course, his actions were, how irresponsible he had acted in trying to, it demonstrated clearly during the Pahalgam period. And we saw what happened post Pahalgam with regard to the US also, the claims that were made, and of course that were later backtracked, not owned up to. So all of those are realities also. And then we want to move on and talk about, of course, a report on Pasni port. And of course, the fact that it was misleading and speculative, as the Financial Times had claimed earlier. Of course, Pakistan has categorically denied and said that this is a misleading and speculative report. And the fact that this allegedly excludes US military use but aims to link port to mineral-rich provinces and a lot that was attributed to it have all been denied. There is also, of course, refutations of the existence of any official proposal or there being any advisors to the Field Marshal Asif Munir in this context. And of course that the idea itself has been exploratory. It's a private, commercial, and of course it's not an official state initiative at all. We have with us Brigadier retired Haris Nawaz. Brigadier Sahab, this story that the Financial Times report that of course has been misleading, and we've categorically denied it. We've also said so. We've also had Pakistan officially clarify that there is no such, that no such advisorships exist, and that the idea itself is exploratory. It's private. It's commercial. It's not an official state initiative at all. this kind of irresponsible journalism? How do you look at it overall?
I mean, it is just, I think, it is just to defame Pakistan. Otherwise, if you're talking about Pasni, you keep doing private studies, you're doing for commercial activities, and you want to have different places where you want to have different ports, but then they are all commercial activity. The more ports you have, the more commercial activity you have, and the more commercial benefits you have. But it has got nothing to do with the military options. This is the government of Pakistan, and their feasibilities are worked out. I don't know whether it is finalized. Still, it should be in the process. I have no idea about it, but definitely there is no question of any military ports or any other activity going on there. It is just might be a study feasibility, and those are always carried out because the population is growing up. Your these commercial activities are going on. Just ports, you need more ports. You need more business to come in Pakistan. That's why you feel that you must have more. But it depends. It takes 10 years, it takes 15 years because still you have a Gaza port is not properly, fully operationalized. Pakistan is trying their best that Gaza port should be operationalized. CPEC should be completed. We want to have economic prosperity out of that. And then, of course, we port, Qasim port, then we have a Karachi port. And even you can have 2, 3 more ports. It depends how much you can need to have a load. But you talk about it and you talk.
I want to come to the fact that, of course, with regard to India also, we have traditionally seen the kind of misreporting during post Pahalgam also, and during Pahalgam also. If we look at their journalists, if we look at their media ethic overall, we've seen clearly, they've been making statements left, right and center which didn't exist. As far as the Financial Times is concerned, one would have expected perhaps for them to have a better, a grip on the reality, a better grip on facts at this time. And of course, there's categorical denial on that also. But broadly speaking, in terms of, the kind of facade India has painted, let's go back to that also, and the kind of statements inflammatory statements that have just been coming. We've been talking to Raja Qaiser about that earlier on also. Do you think it is of domestic importance to them, imperative for their domestic survival, that these leaders are now making these statements?
They always create any fuss, anything which can divert the attention of the Indian public. That needed. You haven't heard the really provocative statement by Chief Army Staff and Chief of Air Staff. The more irresponsible statement coming from their sides, knowing what Pakistan played hell with them in Mark-e-Haq, and they know their worth of their military and they're the untrained, unprofessional military, the way they were thrashed out by our Air Force and they lost 6, 7 aircraft. Still, they are in a denial phase and they still say we are threatening Pakistan. Knowing what Pakistan can play hell with them, they have no capability. These things coming from Indian side just to divert the election. The election time is coming in Bahar. They want to mislead the people of India because they've been highly embarrassed and they have to sell something to the public that still Operation is on. That is what they keep this coming to Indian propaganda side is coming to attention, divert their attention. Otherwise, nothing is of this sort coming up. And Financial Times, whenever such reports come, they should contact the right relevant quarters, government quarters, ask them, get details, and then publish. You should not, the journalism is not only to publish rumors. That doesn't affect it. That's what I'm saying. In any case, what Indian did, Karachi port has been destroyed, Lahore port has been captured, where there is no port in Lahore. We have done this, we have done that. So we need to have alternative if that be.
When we talk about military leaders and when they openly talk about erasing Pakistan from the map or threaten no restraint, or are they not clear violations of what a responsible nuclear state, how it conducts itself, and what this reveals about, of course, their internal military doctrine also? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Mahrukh, please understand, in this market, the world has come to know that India is the most irresponsible nuclear state with untrained and unprofessional armed forces. And Pakistan has proven that Pakistan is the most responsible, mature nuclear state with professional veteran hardened armies. And that is what we have proved to the world. How within 6 to 8 hours we forced India to bend to the knees and keep begging to American president go for ceasefire. And I think Field Marshal Asif Munir, the way he united the nation, then he planned and executed the operation. I think it is known to the whole world. That's what I say our status has gone very high. Now we are a regional stabilizer. India is not known anywhere. The whole region knows except Pakistan. Middle East except Pakistan. Everybody is giving a lot of lift. You see how America is talking about Pakistan. So they don't realize and they keep threatening nuclear attack. You see, the point is they don't understand either. They don't have any upper story because nuclear strike means mutual destruction. They don't understand. We don't come into provocation. We don't want any offensive. We have never thought of nuclear strike. We know what to do at what time. We know our capabilities. We have our missile range is covering every inch of Indian territory. That is why DGISPR said once, if you remember, in second misadventure, we are going to hit their all eastern side of Calcutta, where they have all the refineries. We are going to destroy all those economic laws. They are going to tremendous.
Given the
They
mix of hyper
cannot.
nationalism that we are looking at this time, you also mentioned as far as their Hindutva ideology, also aggressive military posturing that we are seeing. Do you see, and for a while now, do you see India evolving under Modi into an ideologically driven, rogue actor, but also the fact that it lacks any kind of responsibility of a nuclear state that one should have. So it's become that kind of a rogue state where Hindutva doctrine is flourishing, and that itself is a cause of concern for the region, right?
100%. You see, the problem is it is an extremist ideology. They think only upper class Hindus can stay in India. Even lower class Hindu can't stay over here. Just imagine. And they don't understand that a nuclear country has to be very responsible. If a nuclear country with fall flag operation can attack another nuclear country, you can imagine how much they are irresponsible. They are stupid in nature, I would say. That is why their deputy chief was sacked. He said, we are not fit to fight against Pakistan in air combat. They sacked their northern commander of the entire Kashmir region, northern areas, just one day before the war. This is the state of their command. That they are most uncovered and untrained military. And they have no coordination between the military and the civil government. That's why they were not willing to go for war, but Indians had to push them. Even now, you see, when the chief army staff of Indian Army says that now we will attack well prepared, that means when you last time attacked, you were not prepared. Any military and nuclear country attacking another nuclear country without any operational planning, operational training, with all logistics worked out.
I think it's becoming a cause of concern internally also. When we look at, like you said, of course we're looking at the elections also, but when we look at for example, Rahul Gandhi, we look at Arundhati Roy, for example, their own people, their own intelligentsia is also raising alarm over the kind of culture, the kind of extremism that is being encouraged by Modi and is clearly brewing in India.
It's not only brewing, Mahrukh. Let me tell you, I feel within 6 months to 1 year, this same Indian public is going to leave him on the Gujarat railway station and they will give him a small poka that now better again start selling your tea because this is your worth. He has no mental horizon. He has no visionary leader. He is only thinking about extremism. How he can finish all residents of Indian less upper class Hindu. If this is a thought, then I think he is going to self-destruction of India. And I can see with a lot of military might of Soviet Union can go into 15 states, then with untrained, unprofessional military of India, India can go in so many states, and this we're going to see in our own lifetime.
Right. Thank you so much, Brigadier Saab. Thank you for your very valuable input. That's all for tonight. We spoke about reports of humanitarian mistreatment following Israel's Gaza flotilla raid, and of course Pakistan's firm dismissal of misleading international reporting. And of course, it's clear that global narratives at this time are being shaped not just by facts, but by the framing of power. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.